Hello, and welcome to our Ash Wednesday worship experience. I'm James Henry, and I'm the pastor at St. James. We want you to know you're welcome, whether you're watching this live at noon or whether you're watching this some other time. You are precious and welcome in this space. Ash Wednesday is the beginning of a 40-day season of preparation before Easter. That 40-day period is an invitation to self-reflection, sometimes involves self-denial. You may be one of those folks who has given something up during the Lenten period. It might be something like chocolate or some other favorite food of yours that you'll be bringing back on Easter. I don't know, but it certainly marks this 40-day period. Now, normally, Ash Wednesday is marked by placing ashes on your head. Normally the forehead, often in the sign of a cross, and it's a reminder of our mortality. Now, I discourage you from using anything other than palm ash because it can burn your skin if you use like wood ash or something like that. And if you didn't make it to the imposition of ashes at St. James, there are lots of other places you can probably get ashes if you want, placed upon your forehead. As we prepare for Easter, part of what we do in our heart is to take up perhaps practices that draw us closer to God. At the time of Jesus, a 40-day period of time was seen as just the right amount of time to do the kinds of practices that lead to personal transformation. Jesus, if you remember, spent 40 days in the wilderness before beginning his official ministry. And so those 40 days sort of shaped who he became and allowed him a time to kind of ground himself in what he was listening for God to tell him who he was meant to be about. A final clarification, if you will, before he began the public ministry. So if you are looking for a way to kind of engage at a deeper level, we're inviting you to do something this coming season. You might take up a daily meditation practice. Maybe you don't want to do a long meditation practice, but you can begin short. Just a few minutes at the beginning of your day. You could take up a gratitude practice where you make a list of things you're thankful for. Any one of those practices could be a way that bring transformation and may change the way you see things. Beginning today and running all the Sundays in the Lenten season up through Palm Sunday, I'm doing a series on the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer I consider to be a cornerstone of Jesus' teaching. It's a model prayer, but more than a model prayer even, it kind of speaks of what Jesus thinks is important in our relationship with God. As such, I've been doing some background study, a number of books reading about Jesus and the Lord's Prayer in particular, understanding Jesus as an Aramaic-speaking first century man. I'll say more about that when the sermon rolls around. But we're going to be looking at the Lord's Prayer, and today we're just taking up the very first phrase that sort of sets the scene. You may have heard, if you've been praying with us for a long period of time, Our Father in Heaven. We follow that practice. But you may have grown up, if you grew up in the church, with a King James version of it, which is Our Father, which art in heaven, or Our Father, who art in heaven. I've heard it said both ways. Today we're going to take that up and take a look at it. But before we move any further, I want to invite you to take this moment to catch your breath. If you're watching this live, it's the middle of Wednesday. just after noon. And this may be in the middle of your workday. So catching up with yourself and being present in this moment is my invitation to you to wake up to what this moment may offer you. Let's take a moment to be in prayer for ourselves and for the world. I'll lead us in that prayer. Could we pray together? Eternal and ever-loving God, we are thankful this day for your action in our lives, for your calling upon our lives, for the gift that our lives are in this world. We ask as you come before you today that our hearts would be open, that our ears would be open, that we might be open to whatever the next 40 days holds for us, and that we might lay the groundwork today for what that will look like. Lord, the world is chaotic and uncertain, and there's a great deal of struggle around us all the time these days. We're not sure what to do with all of that. For these moments, help us to be present enough that maybe a clue will appear to us. Maybe some sense of reassurance or encouragement will appear to us, whatever it may be. May we find in these upcoming moments the opportunity to reflect on you and to reflect you into our lives. This we ask through the power of your Spirit in the name of Jesus. Amen. So this first century Jesus would have spoken almost certainly Aramaic as his everyday language, would have been raised speaking Aramaic and known it well. He might have had a few Greek words in his vocabulary, particularly if he was looking for work, and if his craftsmanship were fine enough to work on some of the Greek projects in the first century, he might have known a few Greek words. But if he were teaching folks, he would use Aramaic. Aramaic is a language that is part of a group of languages called the Semitic languages. They include Hebrew, as you may know, the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, comes to us in Hebrew. Its original language was Hebrew. It was later translated into Greek, but it existed first in Hebrew. Another sister language of Aramaic, one is Hebrew, another is Arabic. These are the languages out of which the folks who speak of a single God, one God, the monotheistic religions, they all came out of Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. Now, the reason I say it matters that Jesus grew up in an Aramaic culture speaking Aramaic is because language often shapes the way we think about things, the way we perceive things, and how we communicate things. For many of you who are watching this, you grew up in an English language speaking culture, or at least have learned English. Now, if you're coming to this language, English, from another language, you recognize that there are some idiosyncrasies when you're translating into English. I want to suggest to you that there may be more meaning. There may be more meaning to the Lord's Prayer. I'm not saying that the meaning we've gleaned thus far by speaking it in English and repeating it again and again weekly in worship and in other parts of our lives means that it's not valuable just that way, and it is. But what I'm hoping for is that if we take a little glimpse at the Aramaic that Jesus would have taught the prayer in, we might get some glimpses about some richer possibilities as well, so that we might enrich our prayer life and enrich this Lord's Prayer practice on our own. So as I say that, I want to tell you that Aramaic is not, in some ways, as specific as we find in English. For instance, the word in Aramaic Ruha, which is the word for spirit, is also the word for breath, wind, air, and sometimes atmosphere. So if we choose a meaning when we translate it into English, and let's say one time we choose spirit, and one time we choose air, sometimes we choose breath or wind, what we have done is, if we were speaking the original Aramaic, we might have seen how breath would fit into that context. Wind might speak in that context. As we meditate on the text, it might stretch us. When we make a choice about what we think Jesus might have meant in a specific context, then what we've done is we've limited that meaning so that those of us who are receiving it in English are just receiving one of the possible ways of interpreting the text. Doesn't make that way wrong, as I've said, just makes it possible that there may be more to see. So let's just take that first line and look at it together. Abun or awun deba shmaya. In Aramaic, that's 2 words. In English, it's somewhere between 4, and if you use the King James Version, 6 words. Let me start by saying one thing. There is no verb to be like is, am, are, was, were, those words. They don't exist in the Hebrew language. Or in the Aramaic language. And because they don't, the which art or who art in heaven, adding an R makes it art, the verb to be. By adding that in makes it more understandable perhaps in English, but it adds a word that's not there in the original text, that wouldn't have been there in the original text when Jesus taught it. Doesn't make it bad or good. When you're translating, you have to make some choices to make things understandable. Let's take that first word, abun, R-O-N. And both of them are possible pronunciations because the second consonant can be used with the W sound or the B sound. As you hear abun, a literal or direct translation would probably be our Father. In addition to that, though, understanding something about the root of the AB, what we would see as AB, what would be Aleph Beit in Aramaic, that root speaks to createdness, being part of a creative story, initiating a creative seed, that kind of idea. Hence, the word Father, Abba, in Aramaic would come from that same root. But abun, translated often as our Father, also points to the creative process. It's not so much a noun as a sort of a representation of a process as well as a person. The one who initiates as well as continues in the process, the creative process. So when Jesus invites us to address God that way, Jesus is inviting us to address one who not only set into motion all that is, but set us in motion, holds us in motion, and is part of our creative activity in everyday life, so that we're partners, albeit, minor partners perhaps to God, but we are partners in this creative behavior of making the world a different kind of place. We're invited to be a part of that dance, God's dance, in that way. So abun, our Father, if you wish, but also the creative birther of all that is, the one who is behind it all. Second word, which is all the rest of the words in the first line, De Ba Shmaya. It's one word, and I broke the syllables up. Shmaya is the word we translate heaven. From a first century, based on the research that I've done with a scholar who writes about the first century, George Lamsa, as well as Neil Douglas Klotz, who is a more recent scholar, and several others, point to that first century sense that what we think of as a place, heaven, how we've translated that word, Shmaya, it has a richer meaning. The root of it, SHM in the English, is the same if you just took the root itself. Shem means name. It also means light. It also means vibration. It also means identity, name. All of those pieces are wrapped into that word. The Aya ending of it all makes it a much larger and grander. So that kind of totality of it all. So heaven, less a sense of a place in Shmaya than a sense of a participation in a much larger realm than we even can see with our eyes. Much larger participation, a sort of wholeness, a connection to all that is, the oneness of the universe. So attached to the front of it are two consonants, de and b, both of which are used as prepositions. De means to and from, back and forth, and the ba, the second piece, means with, within, in the midst of, within, all those pieces wrapped in together. So the one who is the creator, the birther of everything, the one who is the relational creative connection that not only created, but is creating and will be creating. There's the sense of all three in that name. That one is going to and from, back and forth, is in, within, as sometimes this Shmaya, this totality, this whole, this oneness of all things. And so when I hear that first word through these Aramaic, these first words through my Aramaic listening ears, again, just an elementary student, alphabet, vowels, some vocabulary, and learning some of the rules. It's very similar to Hebrew, which I studied for 2 years, but it's also different as well. Being the elementary student that I am, the sense that I get is we open up by invoking the one who not only created, but is creating us and will be creating in the future. We are inviting Our Father as an invitation, recognition of all, the one who is the birther of everything, who is in, of, and separate from all things, who goes to and from, back and forth from the oneness into our sense of connection. So we are a part of what God's doing. We are a part of the creative process. We are partners, but we are also recognizing that we are not the creator. We are separate from this one who is a part of making the whole the whole. For me, it's an invitation to see myself as not only as an individual within what God is doing, part of what God is doing, but also to see myself as the gift that I am as an individual, but also as a part of everything. No matter how infinitesimally small it may seem to me, I'm a part of all that God's doing. Now, we could spend more time talking about all of the sound and the vibration and the teaching energy that Jesus would have gone into this. But it feels a little bit more like a lecture sometimes when I started talking about it. It excites me. It thrills me, but I don't want you to feel as though I'm just giving you a lecture. I want you to see the richness of being invited into a relationship with the one who is the cause of it all and is the ongoing the ongoing originator of all that is and will be, and that we have a relationship to that one, and that that one is ultimately a part of the all, as well as individually attached and connected to us as well. Don't miss out on the connection that is there. No matter what you may attach to the word Father, as it relates to God, knowing the creative energy that has been the origin of all that is and which leads us into an ever-growing future. We see God in it all, in the all, and we get maybe a reflection of God in that all, that Shmaya. So, what can you do to practice this? We're back to the breath. One of the ways that the Aramaic folks, their word for God, the Hebrew people was Elohim. You might know that the way that our Arab sisters and brothers would address God is Allah. Our Aramaic sisters and brothers would address God as Allah. Very similar in many ways. That Allah sense is the sacred unity of all things, the connectedness. So when you breathe in, you're breathing in from this vastness and feeling you're taking it into your individual self. You're taking that larger sense of spirit, breath, wind, air, atmosphere into you as an individual. And then you breathe back into it. So you receive from the all, you give back to the all. And it is a connection. Sometimes when I'm praying these days, I pray Allah and then breathe in. Allah and breathing out. Not because saying the Aramaic words is in some way magical, just because it was the language of Jesus. But it reminds me of there is no word. I could use the words sacred unity or God if I want, and if that's what you want to do, or spirit, you can do that. But something about that draws me in and connects me back, brings me back to my ground. So I encourage you and invite you to do the same. Just some thoughts. This coming weekend, on the first Sunday in Lent, we will be talking about the next phrase, holy is your name, or hallowed be your name, thy name. And we'll be talking a little bit about what that may mean, what holiness is, and the like. Thanks so much for joining today, for being a part of this. It felt a little heady at times, perhaps. I tried to make it feel more engaging. We'll see. It might have felt a little heady, more like a college lecture, although not so much a college lecture, a James lecture anyway. But hopefully it might have opened up some ways that you might see the Our Father in heaven in a new way, in a wider way, in a way that may speak to you. So with that in mind, I want to wish you all the best. I want to send you out with a blessing. Wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, and whatever you think, know that God is always and everywhere with you. That if you just slow down and catch your breath, you can remember that groundedness, that spaciousness, that connection to all and to God. So go in peace, go in love, Go in a sense of connection and remember you're infinitely precious, unconditionally loved for the gift you already are. Until our next worship experience together, all the very best to you.